Imagine you're 16 years old, you're lost in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, right? In a small lifeboat, a life raft. The trick here is you're stuck on that boat or that little raft with a 200-kilo Bengal tiger. There's no rescue coming. There's no land to see. It's just endless, vast opens of endless water in every direction. This is actually the story of The Life of Pi, the movie. But it's not really about survival here. It's about something far more interesting. And I'm going to tell you many things about this. It's why the human mind sometimes need a story in order to survive reality. You know, some people are like, they tell kind of a joke just to survive, or like ha 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 when it's something really bad. So let me shortly introduce you to the movie, right? Life of Pi follows a young Indian boy named Pi Patel. Pi grows up in a loving family that owns a zoo. Pretty cool. Animals are ingrained in everything that family does. It's their everyday life. But Pi is not only curious about animals. You know, being in an Indian family, religion and faith and so on is a big part of their system, of their culture. So he's curious about faith and what it is. He's not locked specifically into one specific. He wants to explore several religions at the same time. He's fascinated by the idea that humans search for the meaning of life in many different ways. You see, his father, he's like this practical guy and scientific-oriented guy, where his mother is more spiritual and open-minded. So Pi grows up between two worlds. And the reason why this resonates with me is that that's how I grew up. My dad was a trained auto mechanic from the old days, turning into electronics and automation and these kind of things. And I told you in another video that he ended up having his own little company for electronics and remote controlled model hobby, and fixing televisions and video recorders and all these things. Where my mother, she was much more spiritual, and she taught me and took me into what became at that point my religion. So I understand where this boy Pi Patel is coming from. It's, you know, it's like a mixture of reality and belief system. While Patel is growing up in this, all of a sudden everything changes. The family, they decide they want to move away from India and they want to expatriate to Canada. So they pack up, taking many of the zoo animals with them on a large cargo ship. Accident struck them in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. A violent, really bad storm sinks the ship. When the chaos is over, you know, there's always silent after the storm. Pi is the only human survivor here. He's stranded on a lifeboat. There is several animals there. But as we see the movie move on, one by one, the animals disappear. Until only two remains. Pi and a massive Bengal tiger. And the tiger is called Richard Parker. So now the real story begins. There's a boy, there's a tiger, there's this endless ocean, and a battle, not just for survival, but for sanity. So imagine sitting there, you're 16 years old, just lost everything. Everything is chaos, and then you're sitting nose to nose with a Bengal tiger, 200 kilos beast. So, of course, Pi feels that in the beginning, the situation feels impossible. A tiger in a lifeboat typically means death for the person. But Pi realizes something important very quickly. Because remember, he grew up, he was born into a zoo environment, a zoo family running a zoo. If he doesn't learn to live with a tiger, he will die. And as a 16-year-old boy, you cannot just control a huge tiger. So instead of trying to kill the tiger, push it to the water, whatever, escape it or panic about it, he starts to do the only smart thing he can do. He studies it. He learns its behaviors, its patterns, and its fears. Of course, it's a living organism, and it's a mammal. He has animal. That animal has emotions and fears. And then slowly, Pi begins to train the tiger. They are creating boundaries inside this tiny boat. We need to have this dynamic. And then they start to build this uneasy partnership, because the tiger becomes both a threat, but also a reason to stay alive. And this we will get back to a few times in the coming minutes. Because if if Pi stops fighting, the tiger will win. We can't have that. Days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months. The ocean becomes this only universe in existence. You have the sun, you have the storms, you have the silence, you have the hunger, you have the fear, the loneliness, the what if, the grief, loss of family, all these things. But then something unexpected starts to happen. You see the beauty, the wonders. I mean, when you're not afraid and you start to see the things around you, you start seeing flying fish, the bioluminescent ocean, like it's so beautiful. Moments of breathtaking beauty in the middle of the suffering. And through it all, Pi keeps telling his story, because the story itself becomes a form of reality. So I'm going to give you my typical 5 lessons, what this can tell us and what it can teach us. Survival requires a deep meaning. Pi just doesn't survive with food and water. He survives because there's hope, there's purpose. And we will later hear stories about other things that relates to these things. There is a purpose, there's a hope, there's a meaning. I need to do this. Why? Because every person, people can endure almost anything if they believe it has a meaning to something. You have seen people in different cultures enduring the most inhumane consequences of something, or problems, issues, whatever. If they believe it has meaning, they survive it. And many times, even without bad consequences later on in life, or emotions that is completely freaked out. And one of the very, very strong things, I read a book, Man's Search for Meaning, by the author Viktor Frankl. And I really think you should read it if you're into some of these things about meaning in life. Viktor Frankl was a Holocaust survivor. On the Second World War, he was a Jewish. And that one is also fitting this movie Life of Pi perfectly. So the thing is, survival requires meaning. Viktor Frankl, he was a psychiatrist. He was imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps during the World War II. He noticed something extraordinary here. And pay attention. The people who survived the longest, they were not necessarily the strongest or the healthiest. They were the ones who still had something to live for. A child waiting at home, a loved one waiting at home. They had a mission. You saw this with a lot of religious people in different fractions. They survived because they believed they did this for the greater course of their belief system. There was a future purpose. And we have all heard and seen these incredible stories about survivors of these inhumane things. So here comes something that Frankl wrote that he became very famous for. And it is, those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. How am I going to survive? Doesn't matter. I will because I need to do this. I want to do this. It is important, right? And back to one of my favorite authors, Simon Sinek, start with why. And he talks, Simon Sinek also talks about that he's working with Navy SEALs, and he says also, and the Navy SEALs knows it's not the biggest and the strongest and the toughest individual that will survive the Navy SEAL training. It's the one who works for the community, who is working within and has a purpose with this. So those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. Remember this. And why does this fit into the movie, Life of Pi? We have the tiger, we have the ocean, and we have an immense hunger. Those were the how. This is the circumstances. But Pi kept finding a why do I need to do it? You see, the nervous system, as we work on in my clinic, is that it tolerates stress far better when the brain assigns purpose to the struggle. The nervous system tolerates enormous stress when the brain believes the struggle has meaning. I have always said I prefer to work 80 hours a week for myself in my own endeavor, in my own business, in my own things, projects, than 40 hours a week for someone else and his dream and feed his why. This is my why. I prefer to work harder alone on my own dreams and hopes and plans. If you add meaning, if you remove the meaning, the system collapses. If you don't believe in this, why am I doing this? The entire nervous system collapses. Why am I doing it? If you add the meaning to this, humans can endure things that on any given circumstance seems impossible. Life will sometimes hand you the storm, but storms are interesting things, right? Most people, they spend their life trying to avoid storms. The storm does it anyway. It just hands you one thing after the other. The ship sinks, the plan collapses, the future you imagined disappears. But there's a line here that I really like when you think about these things. When the devil whispered in my ear, "You can't handle the storm," I whispered back, "I am the storm." And that's what Pi had to become. He had to become that one, the storm. You see, the ocean didn't come down. The tiger didn't disappear. But the boy Pi changed. The nervous system will become more resilient the same way muscles do. You think my muscles like it when I go to the gym later today and beat the living crap out of my chest? No. They're going to produce lactic acid. I'm going to sweat. I'm going to feel dizzy. I'm going to feel tired. I'm going to why? I'm going to hate the effing gravity. But I'm going to do it anyway because my why is stronger than my how. I want to do this. My why is strong enough to endure that pain. So the nervous system becomes resilient the same way muscles do. I'm building up strength. You cannot build muscles without stressing them. You cannot become a stronger person by avoiding stress. How are you going to do it? You do it by learning that you can survive it. I do it by learning I can push that bar away from me and build some resilience and some strength in my tendons and my muscles. And my breathing follows through and my nervous system follows through and I fight the gravity. And you can too. That's when this happens, is when the brain stops seeing every wave of the ocean coming at you as a threat. Because meaning stabilizes the chaos. So here comes the next thing. The tiger, it represents your fear. The tiger called Richard Parker, it is terrifying. A 200-kilo Bengal tiger. But without the tiger, Pi would have given up. In Life of Pi, the tiger is the most important thing on the boat. But in the beginning, Pi sees only one option. I need to eliminate the threat. Because without the threat, I can be free. But he very quickly realizes something that is immensely important also to you. He cannot kill the tiger. The tiger is like, boom, one time he's out, right? He cannot outrun the tiger because none of them had learned to run on water or outswim it for that matter. And he cannot survive by ignoring the tiger. So Pi does something clever. It's something completely unexpected. He begins to understand it. He sees through it. He studies its behavior. Its reactions, its instincts. He learns to read the subtle clues like a little eye, a nose flickering, or something like the subtle clues in the tiger. When I work with horses, we do the same thing. We study the clues, we try to learn this 500 kilo, 700 kilo animal. We learn to read the subtle clues. So we're not defeating it. But what Pi does, he starts negotiating with reality. Because sometimes the thing you fear the most is also the things that keeps you alive. And in this case, that was what happened to Pi. I've told you before that I like the author and the CIO, former FBI hostage negotiator, Chris Voss. He wrote a very interesting book. I loved it. I read it 2 or 3 times. Never Split the Difference. Chris spent years negotiating with some of the most dangerous people on the earth as a hostage negotiator. His biggest lesson is surprisingly simple. You don't win negotiations by overpowering people. You win by understanding the other side. And his rule is, fear disappears when it is clearly defined. In other words, when you understand what you are dealing with, it becomes manageable. You see, I have worked with people who have fear of heights. some almost we make fun of it and say that if a woman is in a pair of stilettos, she has fear of heights. I mean, I have literally worked with people who was on the top of a table, and they didn't dare to jump down because they were, oh, no, I don't dare. Is it because it's physically, I mean, if you're fit, physically very dangerous to jump 70 centimeters down from a table? Or is it a fear? Yes, if you're 6 meters up, and I know, because I've done it three times actually, fallen down from 6 meters high, and I paid the price, and it hurts. The landing especially is very hurtful. But I still don't have the fear of heights because I know the consequences, and I survived and I managed. But if you have the fear of heights, you cannot do it. Because the fear can and will destroy you. Or it can focus you. And that's how I see it. When I am on a high place, I live on the 6th floor here, I can look down with interest and focus on it, and I can say, okay, there is a certain danger here, and I might not survive 6 stories. So when this happens, then the tiger doesn't become so dangerous anymore. It becomes less dangerous. You start to understand the why. It becomes predictable. When I walk to the balcony and I look down, it's predictable what happens if so and so. That gives me control over the situation. But if I am desperately fear, I have worked with people who hardly dare to walk out of a door to a balcony if it was more than 1 or 2 stories up. They couldn't. They didn't dare. That's fear. Because in normal circumstances, the danger of falling down from a balcony is very little. I mean, only few people fall out if they do stupid things or someone does something to them, right? So the predictability creates your control. And instead of chaos, Pi now creates a system of boundaries, and I said signals, structure. The tiger still exists there, but now it has a place in the story. And that goes the same with us. Our body's alarm system is not our enemy. It's a protection, stress levels, sympathetic nerve tone. Learning to work with the fear instead of fighting it or working with the danger of fighting it changes everything. And this is exactly how our nervous system works. Fear is not your enemy. The unpredictable fear is. When the brain cannot understand the threat, it stays in alarm mode, and that's the fear. When the brain learns the pattern, then the system calms down. And that's why in therapy, in training, in recovery, I don't remove the tiger. I don't take that out of the picture. I teach the brain, the person, how to live with the tiger so that you can recognize it, you can adapt to it, and all suddenly the thing that looked like chaos now becomes manageable. You can, I can do it. You see, it's very important here. Strength is not always about fighting. Sometimes it's about understanding the thing you are afraid of well enough that it stops controlling you. Even a very angry person or an angry animal. I mean, my wife, she's a prime example to that. She can go to almost any animal, an animal that is stressed or fearful or dangerous or agitated or whatever, and she has this amazing ability. She can go and say, hey, who are you? How are you? And in seconds, what I have seen, that animal calms down. Totally. She has that in her. She has it for me too. She's amazing. The next thing is adaptation beats resistance. In the beginning of Life of Pi, survival seems absolutely out of the picture, impossible. The ocean is uncontrollable. The storms is uncontrollable. The tiger is uncontrollable. But eventually, Pi realizes something very profound here. And learn this. If he spends all his energy trying to fight reality, he's going to lose big time. You cannot do that. So he adapts. He builds a system. He learns patterns. Like I said before, he sees patterns and structures and clues and so on. He recognizes his own behavior around the situation. And now survival becomes possible, not because the danger disappears, but because he changes his relationship to it. So he adapts, now meaning survival belongs to the adaptable. You see, if I go out to the balcony, the danger is still there. If I jump over the fence, it's going to be a short but very eventful trip down to the asphalt. And then it might be over. But I can adapt to it because I don't want to jump. I don't do it. I can control it. I adapt to the danger, and there is protection set up for me here. So in my clinic, I often see this in a similar way. You know, people are not always trapped by what happened to them. They are more trapped to the way their nervous systems keeps replaying the event. The brain thinks the danger is still present, so the body stays in alarm mode. You know, I have had some people who came to me and like one woman, she was desperately like horrified by the color red. And she explained to me why, and it was I will tell that story to you one day. It was a very, very, very sad story from her childhood. But the body adapted that to red means danger, means violence, means pain, means suffering. She didn't own one piece of clothing in her wardrobe that was red. She didn't have any items in her house that was red. She avoided it like it was the plague. And in a book that I really have learned a lot from, it's a book called It's Never Too Late to Have a Happy Childhood. It says that you cannot change the past, but you can change how the nervous system stores it. And that's how I mainly work with these things. We do it with different techniques, but we try to store it in a different way. So you see, our nervous system, it's designed for adaptation. The pain patterns often persist when we resist them instead of reorganizing around them. And that adaptation, reorganizing things, builds our capacity to manage it. When we use something we called startle reflex, or we work with emotional freedom technique, we help the nervous system to do something very interesting here. Instead of reliving the experience as the main character, we let the person step back and watch the memory as if they are sitting in a cinema. And I have had clients who, before I opened the mouth and described what had happened to them after the treatment, they said, you know, it was like before I was in the horror movie. I was the main character in this horrible, horrible scene. But now I feel like I'm sitting in the sofa with a remote control. I can see it. I can see it clearly. I can remember it. but it doesn't affect me emotionally because I feel like I sit in the sofa, I can just change the channel with a remote. Same movie, same events. Different way of organizing your nervous system around it. So they go from being the observer, they go to be the observer, and now they're no longer the victim. And when that shift happens, something remarkable occurs. The emotional charge dissolves. The body realizes the danger is over. We can relax now. So your entire nervous system goes into a parasympathetic rest and digest mode. And we are talking people who have lived 40, 50, 60 years I have helped. Going from all the time being, I need to protect myself, I need to, no, to, now what? Now they have to adapt to a new reality of not being afraid, not be stressed, not be anxious anymore. And that's the very similar thing to what happens in Life of Pi movie, the transformation. You see, at first, the tiger represents pure terror. But once Pi understands it, studies it, adapts to it, the tiger no longer controls him, even though the danger still exists, but the fear no longer runs the system. You see, you cannot always run away or remove the tiger from your boat. You can't lift it. You can't force it to go away. But you can learn to stop living in fear of it. And the final lesson of this part I want you to think of is, the goal is life. The goal in life is not to erase every storm. It's to become the person who can sit in the boat and navigate it. Or like other people say, especially in the EFT community, you're the driver of your own bus. There's still a tiger sitting in one of the seats of the bus, but you're driving it. You're running the show, not the fear, not the tiger, not the storm. You are driving the bus. So this is a story that really shaped reality. Near the end of the movie, Life of Pi tells two different versions of his survival story. One version is very brutal. There's no magic, there's no symbolism, just human cruelty and suffering. Bad, bad, bad. But the other version contains animals, the tiger, and the wonder of survival. And then Pi asks the investigators a very fascinating question when they are talking to him. Which story do you prefer? Because both stories explain the same events, but one gives the human mind something it can live with. It can adapt to, it can relate to, even though you are not giving the best of circumstances. The story you believe becomes the story, the world you live in. Another one of my favorite books is Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich book. You see, Napoleon Hill told a remarkable story about his son, who was born deaf, and the doctors believed that he would never come hearing again, or ever. But Hill refused to let that become the family narrative. The thing was, he was born without visible ears. It was thought by the medical society that he had the inner works of the ears, but there was simply nothing. There was no outer ears. So Napoleon Hill does this, that he said, I will implant the very thought and idea into my son that something will happen. He refused to let that fact become the family narrative. So from the cradle where he had his son, he repeated a different story to him. You may not gonna hear like other people or other children today, but one day, technology or opportunity will appear that allows you to hear. He planted that belief system that hearing was still a part of his future. And the beautiful story of this is like, back then, this is very early in history, in the 1900s. Napoleon Hill brought back a record player, a phonograph, as they were called. You know, you have a lacquered record, and you put this big horn, and it would play the music with a spring wind. You have maybe seen them in old movies. We had one when I was a child. But these constructions, they were made in a wooden box, the whole record player. So what happened was that the son, he didn't know why they were so agitated about what came out of it. And by accident, one day, the son was like, he put his teeth to the casing of the record player. And the sound waves from the record player would transduce through his cranium and his skull bones into his eardrums. And he could hear the music. Pure incident. It just happened. So then he started to listen to music by biting on the record player. He could hear the vibrations and turn that into music. Later, there was a new hearing technology that became available that we know as the hearing aid. And Napoleon Hill read about it in the newspaper, and they were looking for people who could test it. And of course, the son applied, embraced it immediately, and he became hearing sounds like real sounds for the first time. So Hill's point was not magic, it was the story we believe about ourselves shapes what possibilities we're willing to see, because you can be ignorant. So actually the son became a very well-respected person in the record or the hearing aid company that developed this, and he became a successful businessman there. How does that connect to this? You see, Pi could have told himself, my life is over, done, the ocean will kill me, done. Instead, he told himself a story where survival was possible, where meaning still existed, where the tiger became part of the journey instead of the end of it. So our human perception is narrative driven. The nervous system is strongly influenced by that narrative. If the brain believes that this situation is hopeless, the system shuts down. But if the brain believes there's still a path forward, the body mobilizes resources. Hope is not just an emotion. Hope is biology responding to possibility or meaning that change the story your nervous system tells about danger, and physiology changes along with it, and along with that, even down to the DNA level. Remember this. The story you believe about the future determines how much of that future you are willing to fight for. Life will always hand you difficult chapters, I promise you. But the story you choose to tell yourself about those chapters, you see, I can and promise you that will change the ending. The story you choose to tell yourself about those difficult chapters, that will change the ending. So faith is actually sometimes a survival tool. Pi never fully explains what really happened at sea. Instead, he leaves us, the viewers, the listeners, with a choice. And the choice is, some truths are too heavy without a story to carry them. The will to do what it takes. Will you do what it takes? Will you? Are you ready to do what it takes? Because oftentimes survival is not about comfort. It's about a decision. Same with the gym again. In Life of Pi, the boy faces a very brutal reality. There's no rescue ships. There's no miracles. There's no solution that just pops out of open air. So he does what humans have done throughout history. He finds the strength and keep going. I'm going to give you 2 real-life examples of this. Aaron Ralston, his story became the movie 127 Hours. He understood that no one was coming to save him. You see, in 2003, Ralston was canyon climbing in Utah when a falling boulder trapped his arm against the rock wall. His arm was stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? A hard place was the mountain, and then the rock slid down and locked his arm in position. It was actually a death sentence. Alone in the desert in Utah. For 5 days, he was completely stuck. 5 whole days and nights. Imagine the pain. Imagine feeling the hand go dead, numb, turning blue. No rescue, no water left, no realistic hope of someone might come and finding him. He was like, Mom, no. Eventually, Aaron realizes the only way to survive, is to amputate his own arm. Cutting it off with a dull knife, not a sharp one, not a surgical tool or a saw to cut the bone, a dull knife. It's the only way, is that or dying. So he did the unthinkable. He did it. He cut off his own arm, God damn it. And he walked out of the canyon alive. Imagine that. Could you do it? I don't really know if I could. The second one I want to tell you about is Leonid Rogozov. He had a similar moment, but this was in 1961. He was stationed in a remote Arctic research base when he developed acute appendicitis. He was a doctor. He was all alone in Antarctica with appendicitis. But he did actually perform surgery on himself. There was no doctors available. He was alone. Evacuation was impossible because of the weather. So listen to this, with a mirror. Without general anesthesia, he removed his own appendix and saved his life. A one-hand surgery with a mirror holding. He held a mirror in front of him and then he was like operating on his stomach. I mean, lower left, right? Lower, yeah. Lower right, sorry. These stories are extreme, I know. But they reveal something that you need to bring out of this. It's a powerful truth about the human mind. When survival becomes non-negotiable, you discover strength you never knew existed. Stop whining. Stop crying out. Stop complaining. Stop feeling offended. It's about survival. I don't like it. I don't like blood. I don't like this color. I don't like if I have a scar in my stomach that is not so beautiful. Then die. What do you expect? It's just on, off. End of story. So here is it, that the faith in this one, they knew if I do it, I will survive. If not, I will die. Faith isn't always about religion. Sometimes it's simply choosing a story that gives you strength instead of despair. Because hope regulates the nervous system, but hopelessness collapses it. The nervous system often limits us long before reality does. I mean, could you? No, if I cut myself here, it's going to hurt and it's going to bleed and it's going to be ugly. Yeah, that's a fear and concerns that is not relevant to survival. Because fear is going to say to you, I can't. No. I can't do it anymore. It's too much for me. No. But it's, you see, most times, the real question is not about capability. It's commitment. Are you committed? Are you willing to do what the situation requires and do it fully? Or are you waiting for someone else to come and rescue you? You decide. It's up to you. When the moment demands it, we humans are capable of far more than we believe we can. My school teacher said that you can do double of what you believe you can do. You can do 3 times more than your teacher think you can do. And you can do 4 times more than your parents believe you can do. So the history shows it again and again. The human spirit is far stronger than the human mind first believes. We see it in bodybuilding. I help sometimes young starts in the gym, like they go, hey, gym dad, can you help me? And I'm like, you can lift more. No, I can't lift more. You can lift more. And I teach them to turn up the signal in the brain to the muscles. And they lift beyond their personal best, way beyond. So Life of Pi is not really a survival movie. It's a story about a strange partnership between reality and the stories we tell ourselves about reality. Sometimes the ocean is overwhelming. Yes, I agree. I have been there, believe me. Sometimes the tiger feels too big to handle, but the human mind has a remarkable ability. It can transform terror into meaning. And sometimes that is the difference between sinking or staying afloat. You have that ability to transform terror into meaning. Remember this. You may not choose the storm, but you can choose the courage you bring to it.